Welcome to a group reading of The Eternal Glory That Is Ham Hocks from If I Had Two Wings, the last story collection from the late and beloved Randall Kenan. Randall Garrett Kenan was born March 12, 1963 in Brooklyn to Harry Lee Kenan and Clara Dunn. He was raised in rural North Carolina, out east on the coastal plain. By his great-aunt Mary Kenan, she was a teacher. Randall Kenan's first novel, A Visitation of Spirits, was published in 1989. A collection of stories, Let the Dead Bury Their Dead, followed in 1992. In the years since, he published often and he published well. From 1997 to 1998, he served the University of Mississippi as the John and Renée Grisham Writer-in-Residence. Over the course of his too short life, Kenan received the Whiting Writers Award, the Sherwood Anderson Award, the John Dos Passos Award, and the North Carolina Award for Literature. Randall Kenan died unexpectedly in the summer of 2020, 3 weeks before his newest and boldest collection of stories was published, 3 weeks before that collection was nominated for a National Book Award. Like Randall, this book is a joy. In the pages of If I Had Two Wings, a ghost emerges from a fixer-upper manse. Billy Idol takes a star turn. A Razorback hog leaves his calling card, and a story ends with the words, "This would be a great day for pork chops." My name is John T. Edge, and I knew Randall from his time here in Oxford. On 3 different occasions, I asked Randall to speak from a podium here, and boy, did he deliver. In 2012, I listened rapt as he breathed out the sounds a hog makes when having sex. In 2018, I listened rapt again as Randall spoke of the meaning of yams in the Ralph Ellison novel Invisible Man. That night, Randall stood to say, "As a sometimes literary critic and a writer of fiction, I militate against the term symbol. Symbols are the stuff of literary garden parties and 7th grade English classes. They are weak beer, and we are looking for the strong stuff. What Ellison is doing is much more akin to moonshine. It can make a dead man holler." In that spirit, we joined together to holler praise for Randall Kenan, to holler his words into the dark. So now we welcome Randall Kenan back to the Oxford Conference for the book in the best way we know how, by reading The Eternal Glory That Is Ham Hocks. 5 readers will step to the stage. All have served this university as Grisham Writers-in-Residence. All join us in marking the big truths that Randall Kenan revealed in a very small place, Timms Creek, North Carolina. Please join me in welcoming Maurice Carlos Ruffin, our first reader.
The Eternal Glory That Is Ham Hocks. My mother did not tell me about Howard Hughes' visit to Timms Creek on her deathbed. She had first mentioned that curious bit of family history several years before, while we shucked and cleaned ears of sweet corn, fresh from the fields, each kernel pearl white and sweet like candy. "Who?" I had said, absently thinking I had misheard her, focusing instead on how good it was to burrow these ears up. A bit of salt, a knob of butter. You simply couldn't get corn like this in LA. The radio had been playing, and at the top of the news had been a report about another settlement in the ongoing battle over the will of the late, great, reclusive, multi-gazillionaire. "Who's that?" I repeated. "Howard Hughes," Mama said, "came and asked me to work for him." I didn't drop the corn, exactly, for I believed I had misheard, misunderstood, misapprehended my mother. But I did squeeze it a tad overmuch, regrettably causing an unsightly bruise. "What do you mean Howard Hughes wanted you to work for him?" She had my attention now. "Oh, it was a long time ago. We were living back at the other place in Mama's house. Your daddy was stationed in the Philippines. Your sister was just a little bitty thing. Mama? Yes, baby? What are you talking about? She gave me that look only a woman who had taught elementary school for decades can muster. Howard Hughes wanted me to come work for him. There's a moment when someone you've known all your born days, someone you respect beyond reason, with the force of superstition. There's a moment when that person says something so incredible it forces you to recalibrate, rejigger, rethink the blueprints of the universe we each haul around in our heads. Before I could say anything, she said, "Oh, but that was a long, long time ago. Long, long time. Before you were born. Why didn't you, what, when, Mama, you're joking." No, she picked up another ear of corn. "Mr. Thompson sure grew some pretty corn this year, didn't he?" Mama? What? What did Howard Hughes? I paused, not certain if I wanted to know the answer to the question I was about to ask. What did Howard Hughes want you to do for you? She laughed. That laugh I now miss so much. Girlish, eyes closed, involving the shoulders, not quite coquettish, but somehow apology and delight at the same time. He wanted me to come cook for him. Can you believe that? The richest man in the world. Shoot. My abandonment of high finance for food was not gradual. In fact, it came to me in a dream. Very Old Testament, prophet-like. Alone in my bed, in my Riverside Drive apartment, I smelled a powerful aroma, so powerful from my childhood. Neurologists say that smell hallucinations are a telltale sign of schizophrenia. But I was well past the age for a psychotic break, past the average age at least. In my dream, I arose, walked to the kitchen, and there in the butcher's block, I didn't actually own a butcher's block at the time, but it seemed right that I would. In this all-factory dream of mine, the sumptuous spread glistened and steamed foods from my North Carolina boyhood, undreamt of on the Upper West Side. Chitlins, pig feet, sweetbreads, chicken feet, gizzards, and livers, and head cheese. There were sweet potatoes and tomatoes and collard greens and okra and squash and, yes, sweet corn. Before long, in walked a woman, naked, save for one of those pirate hats with the great plumes jutting up and out and over. Vividly red it was, and full and large, which all together is undeniably sexy, and which for this narrative would be a digression. Needless to say, when I awoke, it was the aromas, the sights, the warm feelings of the food that lingered with me most. I waited for a decent hour before I called my mother. "Can you tell me how you cooked your chicken livers?" "Baby, why are you cooking chicken livers at 6:30 in the morning? I thought you just had a bagel and coffee for breakfast." "I know, Ma. I know, I just had a craving. Now come on, talk me through it." And thus began what my bosses call a slow descent, but my future teachers call it upward spiral. I can mark the day, practically the hour. Thereafter, I would call home almost daily, often before shopping and while cooking, to pick my mother's brain and to get her advice. I would go home more frequently to watch her in action, to see how she washed the greens, to see what she put in the water with her hog maws, to learn her seasonings, her timing, her heat. I was learning a new definition of love. Between my dad's love of history and my mom's love of learning in general, and her wide reading. It's not hard to figure out how I'd chosen law. Applying law to investment banking was not quite so obvious, but after 5 years, I knew the world of bonds and stocks and mergers and acquisitions was not going to be for me. When I told Mom I was quitting Drexel and had been admitted to a top-flight culinary school in Vermont, her sigh of apparent relief made me smile and made me feel a quantity of relief myself.
Elaine Gino Hughes died during childbirth. She was 39 years old. Her only son, Howard, was away at a high-tone California prep school at the time. The separation had been difficult initially between mother and son, for they had a strange, some would say unnaturally close relationship. They shared a mania for cleaning and a barely kept in check hypochondria. The call to inform his son of his mother's death was probably the most difficult thing Howard Robart Hughes Sr. had ever had to do in his life. By all accounts, though not a particularly good man, a man who found it difficult to keep his penis in his pants when it came to other women, a man who preferred to be away from home most of the time, he felt a love for his wife and child that was, nonetheless, genuine. He was good at the love part, and he was even better at business. Originally a Wildcat, Texas all-man of middling accomplishments, Daddy Hughes one day realized there might be serious cash money in building a better drill bit. What he dreamed up became a dream for the oil business, and his rewards were mighty. By the time of Junior's birth, his father was well on his way to fossil fuel greatness, with the wife who came from old Texas aristocracy, and who one day would be able to give his son the whole world. Howard Sr. built a sprawling brick mansion on Yoakum Boulevard in Houston's well-heeled South Side in 1910. After Elaine's funeral, young Howard returned to the Thatcher School in California, but Howard Sr. wanted his son back in Houston with him. The father argued with the school's headmaster, who thought being away with boys his own age, learning, would be far better for the boy than to be at home with an overindulgent father. But after a year, Howard R. Hughes Sr. got his way, and his 17-year-old son returned to his side at the massive house on Yoakum Boulevard, where young Howard would meet a young woman, aged 30 at the time, a woman hired not long after his mother's death to cook and clean for the tiny family. Inez Cross, later Inez Cross Pickett, my grandmother. My mother never got to see my restaurant in California. I think she would have appreciated it. I cooked for her during those last years, showed her what the LA papers had dubbed Nouvelle Soul cuisine, without my prompting or blessing, but with little objection. Her favorite was my candied yams. She did not approve of my collard greens. And though she found my Frenchified calf's livers admirable, my version of her chicken livers she found incomprehensible. I could tell she was trying not to hurt my feelings. She said, "How much do you charge for this one?" When I told her, she asked, "And you sell a lot of them, do you?" "Yes, ma'am, a good many." Now these chitlins are so creamy, so good. In 1966, there was only one motel in Crosstown, which was the closest lodging in proximity to the wee village of Timms Creek. Completed just a year before, the Crosstown Inn and Motor Lodge was modest by almost any standard, all painted cinder block and particle board and veneer, and an unfortunate nautical theme that had yet to be consigned to the dustbin of interior decorating. Only 14 units, 7 equipped with 2 twin beds, and 7 with a double each. The diner, busiest in the morning with its fried egg and ham special, was where the owner, John Bradham, earned his mortgage. The rooms were mostly used by the rare out-of-towner there to see someone in the county jail, or by families en route to the beaches, another 50 miles east. Which is why, when the two tall men in black suits arrived, driving their brand new and shiny black Lincoln with the California license plates, and snooped around, looking in places your average run-of-the-mill motel overnighter never looks, it more than puzzled John Brandon. But that puzzlement would be surpassed when, bright and early, the tall blonde-headed fellow came to the front desk and informed Mr. Bradham of the desire on the part of a certain unknown employer to purchase the place, lock, stock, and diner. The monetary figure that the blonde-headed man in the black suit offered was 4 times what Bradham had owed to the First Mercantile Savings and Loan, and yet so dumbfounded, so incredulous, so perplexed was Mr. Bradham that he simply said, "Well, I'm just going to have to think on that. Can you let me tell you tomorrow?" The young blonde-headed man, himself a poor shopkeeper's son from a small town in northern Utah, who found this verdant, humid East Coast hamlet peculiar to say the least, beheld the small-town businessman with something resembling awe and even admiration. Who could say no to that kind of money? That is exactly what Noah Dietrich had asked over the telephone line when the young man made his report. Dietrich said that, along with a set of choice words which offended the young Mormon's pristine sensibilities. Dietrich was the man who ran Howard Hughes's far-flung empire and who some believe was responsible for making him a billionaire. Who does that little hillbilly think he is? Yes, Dietrich called John Bradham a hillbilly, which, for the record, demonstrates a deficiency in geographic knowledge on Dietrich's part. York County is in the coastal plain, and there are no hills there. Dietrich was a busy man at the moment, even busier than usual. He had just presided over the forced sale of his employer's stake in Trans World Airlines, TWA, which had netted the Texan over $500 million. And now Dietrich's boss had moved to Las Vegas and was buying casino after casino after casino. Even more aggravating was the fact that the mysterious heir had locked himself up in a suite at the Dunes and was only seeing his Mormon bodyguards. Not even his wife was allowed to see him. Dietrich was busy. Dietrich was preoccupied. Dietrich was mystified. Dietrich had his hands full. And now Howard Hughes wanted to go on to bumfuck North Carolina. Jesus H. Christ on a tricycle. Every motherfucker has his price, the boss always liked to say. When Noah Dietrich told the young blonde-headed man in the black suit and impressively narrow black tie to go back to John Brandon that very minute, and when he told the upright Mormon how much to offer the thrifty Scots-Irish businessman, it literally made the Latter-day Saint commence to sweat. He was sweating when he presented the offer. He was sweating when Branham said, "If you want it that bad, just show me the moolah. You could have my wife too for that kind of money. Hell, take my daughter too. Hot dog, I reckon. And by the way, who do you work for again?" "I'm sorry, sir, but my employer wishes to remain anonymous." This is how Howard Robart Hughes Jr. kept his visit to Timms Creek, North Carolina, in the fall of 1966, a secret. For, after having set a very well-paid private investigator on the trail of one negress named Inez Pickett, Nee Cross, and after she was located, and after he sent an agent to purchase the Pissant Motel to be prepared for his brief visit. The sum, by the way, for Hughes, who was, at the time, pulling down roughly $50 to $60 million per annum, was far less than what he offhandedly gave for a single second-hand jet. And after a team of workers drove up from Georgia, directly from the Lockheed plants with whom he had a long-standing and oh-so-lucrative relationship, and after they modified a few rooms to be acceptable to the boss's strict parameters, all this happened within the course of a week, 7 days, Then and only then could he himself helm a DC-3 with his retinue in tow, who, to a man, and they were all men, all Mormons for the record, really hated it when the employer decided to pilot the plane. He didn't really inspire a great deal of aviatory confidence during those strange and stranger days. Thus, a week after hatching the notion to find Inez Cross, did he, shaven, pressed, fresh-looking, and ever so charming, show up at the door of my mother. Her mother, Inez Cross Pickett, had died in 1963.
After his mother's death, young Howard was never quite comfortable in the Oakland Boulevard mansion. Not only was he haunted by memories of his mother, but also by memories of a simpler, freer, and less complicated time, and of his mechanical explorations, like the time his dad allowed him to purchase a brand new car and to take it completely apart and put it back together again. The courses he was taking at the Rice Institute were fun enough, but nothing seemed to scratch this itch he had. He didn't even know where to scratch. The house only had a bare-bones staff. Despite Senior's desire to get his son back home, he still traveled extensively, leaving his son alone in the many-roomed house with his many man-sized toys and many-footed staff. Teenage Howard was not the sort to befriend the help. The problem arose when Inez did the cooking. "What the hell is this?" "I'm sorry," Inez had said, coming out of the kitchen into the dining room with the imposing table where sat the frowning scion. "What is this?" "It's fried chicken, Mr. Hughes." She was by all accounts a tall woman, thin yet sturdy, sure of herself, with a farmer's daughter's droll humor. No, that, what is that?" Inez had been left to her own devices when it came to the meals and shopping. When she was first hired, Annette, Aline Hughes' sister, Howard's aunt, set her up and familiarized her with the place. HRH Sr. was a steak and potatoes man. In fact, he resented overly fancy food, the sort favored by his late wife and her ilk. Despite his desire to be counted among their number, he still thought of himself at root as a wildcatter, a man among men, a Texan, a beef eater. Taking her cue from the father, Inez kept the meals simple, and in the process reverted to her down east North Carolina ways. "What is it?" He was pointing toward a mound of lima beans awash in a thin, creamy sauce with flecks of meat afloat amid the legumes. Butter beans, they were on sale and, on sale, butter, beans. "Well, okay, I see." He poked the beans with his fork as if they were somehow alien. He sampled them as if they were rumored to do some magical thing like cure heartbreak. After a few quizzical chews and a swallow, he proclaimed, not bad at all." "Thank you, sir." "And is this ham? You put ham in the beans. And butter too. I don't quite understand." "That's ham hocks, sir. You put ham hocks in the vegetables to season them up good. No butter, just ham hocks." "Fascinating," Howard said, and went back to studying an engine diagram while eating absent-mindedly as always, completely forgetting about my grandmother. How my grandmother, whom I never met, a young African-American woman born in a teeny North Carolina town in 1892, found herself in Houston, Texas in the 1920s, I've yet to discover. There are suggestions that she was following a man who did not become my grandfather. Rumors of following a family to Texas to work for them, rumors of a job offer. Ultimately, I have no clue as to how much experience she had cooking for the well-to-do or how good she was at it. On January the 14th, 1924, Howard Hughes Sr. dropped dead. At 19, young Howard was thirsting to be his own man. He had no intentions of waiting 2 years for his legal majority to kick in. Therefore, he had his lawyers quickly buy out his relatives' inherited interest in the Hughes Tool Company to a 1, thus making it completely and totally his, and more important, he convinced a judge to declare him an adult. By June, he had married a Houston aristocrat like his mother, to silence any naysayers about his prematurely acquired mantle of manhood. He moved to Hollywood, and later that same year he hired Noah Dietrich. The house on Yoakum Boulevard was closed up, the staff let go. Junior never said goodbye to Inez Cross. A lawyer handed her her final check.
According to my mother, my sister found a particular fascination with Howard Hughes' shoes. Odd when you figure she would one day become a buyer for Nordstrom. Hughes was 61 and unaccustomed to dealing with anyone who didn't work for him and fear him. 3-year-old black girls simply didn't figure into his cosmology. I'm really sorry to hear about your loss, ma'am. She was a fine lady. 1963, did you say? Yes, sir. She died after Christmas. Hughes remained silent, and the silence grew long and uneasy. Can I get you something, Mr. I'm sorry, what was your name again? Hughes, ma'am. Howard Hughes. I'm a junior. Your mother, she worked for my father and me. I see, Mr. Hughes. Let me get you some iced tea. Veronica, leave that man's shoelaces alone. Come here. I'm so sorry, Mr. Hughes. That done, sweaty glass of iced tea in his hand, the awkward silence returned. So, Mr. Hughes, is there anything I can do for you? Hughes put down his glass. Mrs. Cross, I mean Pickett. Actually, I'm a Chasen now. My husband, he's stationed in the Philippines at the moment. He's a mechanic in the Army. Hughes's eyes lit up at the word mechanic, but a harsh, single-minded, pragmatic look took over his brow. Do you cook, ma'am? Of course I do, but now see here, I'll get right to the point, Mrs. Chasen. I'm not a man to dilly and dally around, if you get my meaning. See, your mama, she used to cook for me, see, right after my dear mama passed. And, well, I'll tell you, Mrs. Chasen, that was about the most, how do I put it, the most memorable food I've had in all my born days. Unusual, satisfying, like nothing I'd had before, or, to be honest, since. Now, I'm not the sort of man who spends a lot of time thinking about food myself. Take after my pa like that. But your mama's cooking, well... Howard Hughes stood up, as if the need to pace had overcome him, but when his head came so close to the ceiling, he seemed to think better of it and sat back down, but now perching on the edge of his seat, his large frame casting a shadow upon the room. To be completely honest, I didn't really appreciate it so good while she was there, but after she left it kind of lingered, if you get my meaning. Never had a biscuit quite like hers, you see. In fact, I can think I honestly say hers was the first biscuit to cross these lips, you see. Recently here I've been hankering, if that's exactly the word I want, hankering for her cuisine, something fierce. It took my mother a while to receive and digest what the industrialist, who to her at the moment was just some tall white fellow, a little strange, who clearly in his better days had enjoyed charm and good looks, but who now was riding on the steam of his money, and who obviously had more of that commodity than he had any clue what to do with. Well, Mama said, I'm sure she would have been proud and happy to know you liked her cooking so, mister. Proud and happy. Mrs. Chasen, I would like for you to come back with me, back to Nevada, where I've recently taken up residence, and I want you to cook for me, the food your mama used to cook. My mom laughed. She always laughed when she got nervous. Cook? Nevada? Me? This was simply too much. Don't worry, I'll make it worth your while. Yes, sirree, Bob. Hughes then called out a sum that made my mother stop laughing. Excuse me, she said. You can't be serious. Hughes doubled the figure with a casual, imperious air meant to indicate how little money meant to him, but oddly enough, it had exactly the opposite effect. My mother rose to her feet. I'm sorry, sir, but I'm going to have to decline your offer, but I thank you. Hughes, undeterred, pronounced a figure that even now, in the 21st century, just seems ridiculous, an insult even, which is exactly how my mother took it. Her eyes narrowed at him. Mister, my husband is overseas. I'm a school teacher with a 3-year-old and another on the way, and she put both her hands on her big belly on me. Now, I don't know how you folks do things out here in Texas and California and Nevada, but here in North Carolina, I put my family and my responsibilities first, above all else, above money. And frankly, I don't know what kind of game you think you're running, but I don't want any part of it. And in fact, I suggest it's time you were on your way. Hughes stood up and picked up his hat. Ma'am, he said, in my experience, everybody has their price. You don't have that much money, mister. At that, Howard Robard Hughes Jr. laughed, a big, loud, mocking guffaw. He was still chortling as he walked out the door, snickering as he got into the back seat of the Lincoln, chuckling as it drove away down the dirt road and vanished into the ether.
Apparently, Hughes didn't intend on giving up that easily. He sent lawyers several times over the next couple of months with contracts and sometimes with checks, once with a bag of money. Literally. One wonders, why didn't he just hire another chef? One of the 15,000 or so truly excellent cooks working on any given day all over the planet Earth. But this mania, one among the many he collected and harbored and cultivated like virulent viruses in the petri dish of his soul, wasn't really about food. In the end, it was about time. Time lost, time gone, about remembrance, about a feeling. Money can't buy you love, a famous song says. But that's just one of the several things beyond its grasp. In truth, I can't emphasize about biscuits and my kinswomen. One of my earliest childhood memories, early June, blueberry season, my mother would macerate the plump new berries briefly, only for a few minutes, with the slightest touch of sugar. And next over a fire, they'd go gently heated, a slight simmer, creating the simplest of simple sugars, but somehow beautified, blessed, and blessedly blue. When sopped up with one of those steam white and steam light biscuits created with cold butter, just before the first rooster awoke, the resulting reaction in mouth arrested the tongue and captured the brain. For a boy with no knowledge of sex, this basic sensual experience, firing off every nerve ending with sunshine and delight, taught me everything I would need to know about orgasms long before I ever had need for the word. All Howard Hughes real estate holdings were owned by the Summa Corporation, which years after his will was settled was finally sold to the Rouse Company. When I last checked, they still own the Crosstown Inn in Motor Lodge, and the place hasn't changed much. The eggs are still greasy, the ham tough as shoe leather, the coffee fit for removing toilet clogs. Daddy did well as an electrician, very well indeed, over the years. And Mama got her master's degree. It took many years to drive back and forth to East Carolina University twice a week. She became a principal at the local elementary school. For a few years before she retired, she was a county school supervisor. When I asked her why she turned Hughes down, she said merely, I didn't like the smug way he asked. Like he could buy and sell folk on a whim. Besides, if he was going to pay somebody that kind of money, which I simply couldn't believe to begin, For somebody to stir him up some shrimp and grits, I know he had to be stone crazy. And when I asked why she had never talked about this rare encounter before, she said, I didn't want your daddy to know. To be frank about it, do you have any idea what that man would have done if he knew I turned down that kind of money?